Installation artist, filmmaker, and co-founder of Snarkitecture, Daniel Arsham has made a career out of challenging our mind's understanding of the material world. This is his blueprint. Were you drawn to art as a teenager?
Primarily photography. Photography was always something that I used as a kind of, like a visual sort of note-taking device. And I continue to use photography as a way to sort of keep myself thinking and as a sort of catalog of travel and things like that. And the photography sort of led to an interest in architecture, and I was always sort of into art, but I would say that architecture and photography were my sort of first things that I liked.
Now, you elected to go to Cooper Union, which is an art school. Did you have a sense at that point what your art was going to look like or how you were going to start expressing yourself?
Cooper Union was this sort of dream place to go to, right? I had been to New York City once in my life, and it was a school that, I felt was sort of on the most cutting edge of what I saw myself doing in the future. I had a professor, I remember first year, we spent 6 months in one course making stuff out of cardboard, like literally just sheets of cardboard, and you're forming it. And one of the things that he said at that time that has always stuck with me is, if you can make this material look like something else, make cardboard look like it's water, or make it look like it's foam, or make it look like it's a building, alter the materiality of it in a way that causes people to think differently about it.
So a lot of the work that you're most known for today is incredibly intricate and also oftentimes huge. And I would imagine that the fabrication of this is not easy. Coming out of school, you don't have necessarily the resources and the means to do things like this. What was the stuff you were making at that point like?
I would say I always kind of worked with what I had, while pushing the ability both of myself and also the people that I was collaborating with to kind of make the biggest, most difficult thing possible. But a lot of the work I was making out of school were paintings, things that were potentially imaginary scenarios of things that I could make larger. I was making a lot of paintings of these kind of icebergs with architectural constructions on them, things that when you look at my work today, you might make a correlation. But obviously making a painting, it's just me in a studio with like $50 worth of paint. Now, the works are made of crystal and volcanic ash and semi-precious stone and all of these things that not only require a different resource financially, but they also require skill sets that are far outside of my own, mold making and other casting techniques. So I've sort of, each time that I get to a place, I'm kind of pushing where can I take this next.
As Daniel expanded to bigger platforms, he found himself in a unique position, being able to make art as accessible for collectors as for sneakerheads. What was the stuff that you were doing in your own art practice from 2003 to 2008?
I actually moved back to Miami from New York, and some friends of mine had started an exhibition space there called The House. This was before Art Basel was around and all of that. And we essentially put on exhibitions of our friends and different people. We would bring artists in from Europe, and this is actually how I ended up meeting Emmanuel, because he was in town for one of the first editions of Art Basel, and this was before there was parties and dinners and all of this other sort of side stuff. So after the fair was over, he asked people he knew there, are there artists here I should go see? And the director of the museum and a couple different collectors pointed him to come see us. Met him there, and the next year he did an exhibition in Paris that was a kind of group of Miami artists. Emmanuel has a particular talent in not only finding people, but trusting, right, and investing in them. Because if I look back at what I was doing 15 years ago when we started working together, it's hard for me to identify how or what he was looking at particularly that was so different from every other artist that was showing at that time. A lot of my work is really about taking things that people already know and that they have an expectation about and subtly sort of transforming that. There's a lot of works that I've made that manipulate the surface of architecture. So you look at a wall and it appears as if it's rippling or it's melting. These are works that, when shown, you almost barely notice the works. This sort of subtlety combined with this very jarring aesthetic can be very sort of impactful for people. This is a whole series of work that manipulates the surface of the wall obviously causing it to appear not only that a figure is there, but that the wall is kind of malleable and flexible. I knew that I was colorblind, all my life. It's not something that was pointed out to me on many occasions, or something that I even thought about as being part of my work. Most of my work has been in an extremely reduced color palette, ranging from essentially black to white and everything in between. Like when I'm manipulating a wall, they're in the gallery, the walls are already white, so it's a manipulation of that sort of color and texture. And I've made a lot of works that use geological materials like crystal and volcanic ash, and I've left the color in the work. So the black works are volcanic ash, the white works are crystal, and it's sort of inherent within them. I have a lot of things on the desk that are materials or studies of things that I'm working on that at some point may become something, but this could take another year before it actually is a work.
I believe you're the first fine artist to do a collaboration in Adidas, is that true?
I'm probably the first artist, and probably the only artist now, to be signed with Adidas, which is an interesting thing for me.
What is it about your work you think that connects with people?
In the art community, they may have a different read on the work than a 15-year-old high school student, but it says something to both of them. And I think that certainly having a direct platform to speak to people, like through Instagram, I've used that heavily to talk to people, to understand what they're thinking about, to understand also their reaction and what their sort of read is on the work. This is like a 1993 starter jacket. One of the most complex molds that I've ever made, because it has both an exterior surface and an interior surface.
Oh, interesting.
So there's no jacket inside. This is entirely made of volcanic ash, pyrite crystal, and selenite crystal. I don't ever try to make things have a specific meaning. I try to allow things to have many potential meanings and many sort of different interpretations, and that lends itself well to sort of broadening the work out into multiple audiences.
As Daniel broadened his creative output to film and beyond, he tested the limits of his capacity and learned to balance his ambitions with his bandwidth.
I worked on this film series called Future Relic, which was at Tribeca and was in Cannes. Film in general, I think, is a much more sort of open medium that everyone kind of feels like they can access and feel comfortable about. And the film work opened up my art practice to a much wider audience, partially because of the talent that I was working with, but partially just because I think people were able to see the work in a different context. They saw it as a kind of element in this larger narrative. I'm always sort of taking notes about things, so a lot of the time that I spend traveling on planes, I never watch films on the plane. I'm always drawing or using that time as a kind of rest period. And many of the concepts that are present in my work today are things that were developed on a plane 5 years ago. And take that amount of time to sort of to build and also to figure out how to make them. The things that I'm showing this fall are things that I've been working on for the last 2 years in some cases. I think it's general just about kind of pacing yourself, I mean, there's only a limited amount of work that I can produce in any given year. So I'm not doing 30 shows in a year. I can do like 5 maybe. And out of those 5 things, I have to choose between a number of different, potential opportunities. And at the same time, I'm trying to expand, because of my own sort of interest in it, into film and in architecture. So it's kind of like a bandwidth thing. Like, I try not to spread myself too thin and really deliver and pay attention to the things that I am working on. So we did a massive project that's been touring the world for the last year and a half or so, which was a version of this all-white ball pit that was on an immense scale. Imagine this, where the actual area that you can jump into is like twice the size of this entire room. And this is a prototype of a chair that we're working on that sort of appears as if it's off kilter, right? And this stone makes it level again.
Oh, interesting. And when you look at your personality, what do you think are the attributes that have sort of sustained your success?
I'm here every day at 9 o'clock. I leave at 6 o'clock. This sort of growth into other disciplines, like working in stage design, and since then I've made stage design for opera. We had a massive piece that I worked on with Pharrell and a choreographer named Jonah Beaucaire that's on a world tour now, was here at Brooklyn Academy of Music, going into film as well. So this kind of broadening of my artwork into different disciplines. A lot of the collaborations that I've done with Usher and Pharrell and other people in music and in film, I met those people and knew them well in advance of those things happening, and they were more a way of working with friends. Ronnie Feig, for instance, has been a longtime client. I think when Ronnie first came to talk about the first Kith, he didn't know what it should look like, but he knew what it should do, right? He knew how it should feel. And so our job is to translate that sense, that feeling, into space. And it's not an easy thing to do. When I feel strongly about something, I make a very serious stand for it. This has happened with Ronnie also, where he doesn't want something or he thinks that we should go a different direction, and I've literally gotten into a screaming match with him in his office saying that I think that it has to go this way, or just straight up do it and then don't tell him.
How is that going over?
After time, he's come to trust me and come to understand that if I feel that strongly about something, that he's going to get behind it too.
At any given time, how many different projects are you working on at this point?
I don't know, 100. Different things that may or may not happen, but things that I want to do, things that I have ideas about, things that are in the very early stages. Most museum exhibitions that I'm working on are years away. So the things that I'm making now and that I'm going to be showing this fall, we've been working on since 2015 in some cases. The projects are in some ways as accessible to a 15-year-old kid in the suburbs as it is to somebody who's studying architecture at Columbia. I don't want to make work for a kind of limited audience. I want to make work that speaks to everyone.